Keynote by Mr. Oliver Bisazza.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction and to the organizers for inviting me here today. This is my first ever MedTech conference in Malta, and I'm already very impressed by the organization, the location, and the time of year. My name is Oliver Bisazza. I'm representing MedTech Europe, which is the leading industry voice of the MedTech sector at European level and internationally. We represent the manufacturers of medical technologies towards governments, towards external stakeholders, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit in 15 minutes about three things. First of all, just so we're on the same page, what exactly is medical technology? Secondly, I'm going to present to you some of our latest European market data statistics, which were just updated last week or two. And thirdly, for those of you who are perhaps entering this space for the first time, I'm going to give you some key considerations for you to keep in mind if you are going to try commercializing medical technologies in a place like Malta or Europe. Very important to be aware of them so that you do not fall into some of the common pitfalls. As an organization, as I said, we are representing the industry. This means specifically nearly 150 multinational corporations who are manufacturing medical technologies under their own name, but also approximately 50 national medical technology associations in European Union member states or in countries surrounding the EU region. I have to say in transparency, we do not yet have a national association in Malta, but if events like these really do help foster a future Maltese MedTech hub, we could have one potentially very, very soon. But we are by far the most representative industry association for this sector at European level. Now, what is MedTech? What is medical technology? It's sometimes assumed, but it needs to be known. We are not talking about just any healthcare, wellness, or lifestyle product. Certainly not any healthcare or wellness app that you may find on the internet or any product that looks like it might be interesting for healthcare monitoring in a flea market. We are talking about regulated products, regulated healthcare products, which are mainly meant to be the tools in the hands of European healthcare professionals like doctors, nurses, and lab professionals. When we say MedTech, we are referring collectively to two things. One, medical devices, which are often used for treating or monitoring disease, but also in vitro diagnostic tests used for screening, diagnosis, and healthcare monitoring. They are not drugs. But they exist alongside medicines as a key tool in the healthcare system's arsenal, and they intervene along the patient pathway to help better manage disease, whether it's early detection and diagnosis, screening, monitoring, treatment, care, or follow-up. Some of them are what we increasingly are calling digital health solutions, but many of them are traditional as well, and it's estimated that about 500,000 of them currently exist in Europe. Some examples from the medical devices side about what we're talking about. We're talking about some very common things that may be needed later in life in particular, like stents, hip replacements, pacemakers, or knee replacements. And as you can see from some of these data points, across Europe, a very, very large number of these are used to help patients not just every day, not just every minute, but every few seconds. That's the extent of the patient needs for these medical technologies, which our industry steps up to provide. Now, Deputy Minister Fern spoke very passionately, I thought, about the topic of innovation, and I'm glad he did so, because innovation in this sector is extraordinarily vibrant, especially in Europe. And that's important, right? Because if we're going to step up to some of those challenges the Deputy Minister talked about, the challenges of rare disease, the challenges of greener healthcare, the challenges of antimicrobial resistance, or lessening the impact on our stressed healthcare workforces, we're only going to be able to do that if we can continue developing innovation of products and solutions and actually getting those innovations to the market and healthcare systems who need it. And the good news is that this sector has historically been extraordinarily innovative. A lot of that innovation has come, by the way, from very small companies like SMEs or startups. And it's evidenced by the very, very large number of patent applications which are filed every year. Last year, there were well over 15,000 patent applications in MedTech filed with the EPO. That's far more, by the way, than what pharma or biotech file. And in fact, it's only second in Europe to one sector, which is IT. That's how innovative this sector is. This is how innovative this sector needs to remain if we're to step up to those challenges that were mentioned. And so it's really important that the companies, be they large or small, who are developing this innovation have the necessary support they need to get the innovations into our lives. Be that through guidance from organizations like ours, be that through support from governments, be that from a workable regulatory pathway, be that through a workable market access pathway. But the innovations are there and they flow in every year and they attempt to reach the patients who need them. The sector is also a very important employer across Europe. Now, a lot of this employment, I have to say, is coming from companies like Ireland and Germany, but there are massive employment of this sector across Europe. We estimate about 850,000 people were directly employed by this sector in Europe in last year alone. We believe there are approximately 35,000 medical technology companies in Europe, if you include companies like distributors. And while the percentage of SMEs of the sector varies from one year to another, it's still very, very high, with about 92% of these companies being in the SME bracket. Again, many of them are located in countries like Germany, Italy, the UK, and Switzerland, but they do exist everywhere. And it's important that they exist everywhere so that we can have variety of companies and variety of life sciences clusters developing across the region. Now, health technologies, be they medtech, pharma, or something else, of course cost money, and they cost money for Europe's healthcare systems and national treasuries. They are not for free, and in fact about 11% of GDP on average is spent on healthcare, which is significant. That just goes to show how much healthcare is a growing need in Europe due to things like our aging population, our social security systems, and the high standards of care Europeans tend to accept. So it's a lot that is spent on healthcare. I'm not going to shy away from that. But what's important to bear in mind is of that 11% of GDP spent on healthcare, a fairly minimal proportion is spent on products like medical technologies or pharmaceuticals. Some are, about 15% of that is spent on drugs, nearly 8% on medical devices, very little spent on in vitro diagnostic tests, by the way. But what is the vast majority of healthcare expenditure, according to studies, is actually spent on the delivery of care. It's keeping hospitals running. It's keeping laboratories running. It's employing those healthcare workforce members, which are indeed increasingly scarce. So healthcare is not cheap, but it would be wrong to think that our biggest financial challenges in healthcare are coming from the cost of products. Obviously, the products need to be priced accordingly, and their value needs to be assessed correctly. But if we're looking to manage the expenditure on healthcare, the true picture is actually in the delivery of healthcare. And that's where I would agree with Deputy Minister Fern. If we can find innovative solutions to make healthcare more efficient, more affordable, delivered in a more targeted and strategic manner, we have the potential to manage this financial challenge very well. But it requires innovation to be facilitated and embraced. Now, if we look at Europe as a market for medical technology, it is actually enormous. It's the second biggest in the world, second only to that of the United States, and covering about 26% of the total world market, estimated to be worth about 160 billion in 2022. Obviously, when we talk about Europe, this is bringing together 28 different countries, and some of the countries have bigger markets than others. Germany, in particular, is a very, very big one. But it just goes to show that those companies who make the effort to bring devices and in vitro diagnostic tests to the European market have access to a very, very substantial one. And that is one of the reasons why, despite the complexity of Europe, Many, many companies still treat it as a very key market to be in and to thrive in as a sign of being successful companies in this space. Europe is also having a very healthy trade balance with other regions of the world for medical technologies. It's a positive trade balance. In fact, it's slightly greater in 2022 than in 2021 because a lot of trade is happening through exports to United States, China, Japan, and other places. Now, most of that, I have to say, is the United States and China. If you combine those two together, you've already got more than half of the external trade balance. But as you see, there is single-digit exports to many other key markets as well. These are countries where there is a need for healthcare and where exports from European players are regularly purchased. Similar for importation. We also rely a lot in Europe on devices imported from other parts of the world as well. Again, United States and China are massive ones, but there are other ones as well. So this is not just a sector where things are made and developed in Europe for Europe and that's it. It is a global industry with lots of cross-border movement in the technologies. Now, I talked about what medical technology is. I talked a little bit about our market data statistics, which you can find, by the way, on the MedTech Europe website. They were uploaded a week or two ago. I'd like to spend the last 3 or 4 minutes just mentioning some of the key considerations you should have in mind if you are entering this space, scaling up your portfolio, and interested to really enter the market in a smooth manner as you can. First of all is regulation. Healthcare is, of course, regulated because we're talking about technologies which impact the lives of patients. And patients need to have a very, very high level of safety ensured. And we also need to ensure that medical technologies work as claimed. They do what they say on the tin. Europe has very substantial regulations in this space, in place since 2017, in fact. And we would consider them perhaps the most comprehensive set of medtech regulations in the world at this time. There are other substantial regulations in other regions like the US, but Europe has very, very substantially upgraded the complexity and even the demands of its regulations in the last few years. For the right reasons, I would say, but it's also important to know that it has been an incredibly complex journey so far to implement these two regulations, which are called the Medical Devices Regulation and the In Vitro Diagnostics Regulation. So challenging, in fact, that some products have started to disappear from the market in some countries. So complex, in fact, that some medical procedures have been disrupted as a result of it. And certainly so complex because now so many innovations which used to come from this sector to Europe first are starting to sometimes be launched in other regions of the world, like the US and Japan. It's not necessarily a permanent situation. It is inherently reversible, we believe, and we think it should be reversed if we're to truly leverage the power of medtech innovation. But I want you all to know, if you're currently contending with this very difficult situation, we are calling upon the European Union institutions and the national governments to very seriously think about reforming this complex regulatory system, not to throw it in the bin or to lower the bar for patient safety, but to have a very serious look about whether they are meeting their intended goals and how we can make the system more friendly for innovation, for small companies, and for access to care. But it's not just regulation. I will also echo what Minister Fern said about climate change. Sustainability has become an enormous consideration for all industries in the last few years, and that includes healthcare industries like ours. I'm going to make a very blunt statement. Healthcare industries were not in the crosshairs of sustainability as early or as substantially as other sectors like cosmetics and consumer goods were, but it is changing. It's changing in the number of regulations which are coming. It's coming in the ESG investor space. It's coming in some hospital tenders, which are now requiring products to meet a certain standard of energy efficiency or carbon to be purchased. And it's expected increasingly by society and employees. So I believe very strongly the companies who are going to continue thriving in this space in the next few years are those who embrace the sustainability agenda and try to contribute to the very complex task of making healthcare part of the solution and not just having an ecological footprint. And finally, because I'm running out of time, I will also mention the digital health dimension. Not all medical technologies are digital, but increasingly many are, and a lot of the most exciting innovation is coming from the digital space. It's important to know that the rule book around digital health and data is about to change very substantially too, with new European legislation coming in the next few months on key things like access to health data, like artificial intelligence, like the cyber resilience of healthcare systems, and so on and so forth. If your devices are having a digital component and they are accepting or transmitting data, please have a look at this space. Just because your product looks cool and seems to work does not necessarily mean it is built around the rules which are coming. So don't be taken by surprise. Look very carefully at what's coming here. There are many consultancies and organizations like ours who can help you, and we want you to actually get your exciting innovations successfully to patients, not be blocked at the last minute by regulations you weren't aware of. There is so much more I could say about this exciting industry, but I was asked to be brief. Thanks for your attention. Have a wonderful conference, and thanks again to the organizers.